Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Hello, and welcome to the Old Goats Podcast. I got the Ogre with me here, and Hoffa, and we're going to tell you about 1950. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. 1950 to 69 champions of the National Football League. But before we get to that, please remember to like and subscribe. That will help the goats out. Take it away, Hoffa.
Thank you, Howard.
1950. Thank you.
1950, the Cleveland Browns had come from the All-American Football Conference and joined the NFL. And basically the year that they came into the NFL, they won the championship that year. They played against the LA Rams, and the final score was 30-28. It was on December 24th. There wouldn't have been one fucking Cuban attending that game because that's our big party day on Christmas Eve. But
The
anyways.
24th, Noche Buena, I believe they say. I've been told my Howard Cosell impersonation is a Jewish deli manager mixed with a robot. Proceed.
The game was played at Cleveland Stadium with 24,000 fans in attendance. The Browns' season record was 10-2 and were coached by Paul Brown.
Legendary.
Legendary.
Paul Brown.
George Preston Marshall, this fucking guy. Piece of shit guy. Every fucking time. Owner of the Redskins, which was known for putting his foot in his mouth. Like that, huh? Stated to the press, the NFL's weakest team can toy with the Browns. The AAFC has not the same talent caliber as the NFL.
Now, this made the Browns 5-time champions.
Right, because they dominated. They won all 4 championship games played in the AAFC. They won all 4. So this was their first actual season playing in the NFL. They went all the way, which is pretty admirable.
And they didn't just beat any other team.
Right, they beat the big boys on the block, which was the Rams at the time.
The
Rams
Rams
had a hell of a team too.
That year, the Rams averaged 309 yards passing, a record that wasn't broken until 84 by
Dan Marino.
Dan Marino. They averaged 309 yards passing, 140 yards rushing.
Who was the quarterback?
Bob Waterfield and Norm Van Brocklin, 2 Hall of Famers at quarterback. And they set the single-season scoring record, which lasted until 2018. This was one hell of a football team.
Greatest show on turf back in the 50s, I guess. Huh?
The original.
They were led by Vitamin Smith, by the way. I have to throw in the guy named Vitamin.
Beautiful football name.
The difference was the turnovers. Waterfield, which, like you mentioned, was a Hall of Famer and a great quarterback, not so great in this game. He threw 5 picks.
It's a watered-down version of Waterfield.
Waterfield was more like a puddle this fucking game.
It's muddy waters.
So, 1951, hallelujah, hallelujah. My final
We just
year.
started the video. What?
Oh shit, my bad. 1951, LA Rams versus Cleveland Browns.
A rematch.
A rematch, but this time the Rams would ram them.
David slew Goliath.
Hey, stop that.
That's my line.
The final score was 24-17 with the Rams on top. It was played on December 23rd. The game was played at LA Memorial Coliseum. Excuse me. With 57,000 fans. Fucking peanuts. 57 fans in attendance. The head coach was Joy Skyder, and their record was 8-4, which is for a championship team. I don't know. That doesn't sound too good. It was a
Respectable,
rematch.
but
This was a rematch from the previous year. The Rams had an up and down season, not winning more than 3 games in a row. The Rams had lost in week 2 to the Browns 38-23.
again,
Again, that comes out again. It's weird how that happened a lot back in the day.
and what is it? Explain.
Back in your era.
Explain
how
it to them, because
Oh, you didn't watch the first video.
if you didn't watch, which you should.
When a championship team, or the team that won the championship that year, was always upset by the team that they beat in the championship game during the regular season, which happens a lot.
The winning team had lost earlier.
To the other team, to the team that got beat in the championship game. The Rams were led by Elroy, Leon, Crazy Legs, Hirsch. Halfback.
Is that Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Yeah, halfback and an end. Ogre's the Hall of Fame. Fucking
Our Hall of Fame editor, Ogre.
the Ogre. You called him the Ogre. You gotta throw
The one and only. We only have one.
A future Hall of Famer, and Bob Waterfield, the quarterback, also a future Hall of Famer, and Norm Van Brocklin, quarterback. Which is weird that they had 2 quarterbacks.
Another future Hall of Famer. But
Right, they were both Hall of Famers and they were both quarterbacks. Which is kind of crazy. Well, Van Brocklin was only his 3rd year in the league, so he was kind of young. Waterfield had been there for a while, so he was probably getting old and crusty.
it was like a Rodgers and Favre thing.
Right, yeah, don't mention those 2 assholes.
Young and Montana, if you will.
Don't mention those 2 assholes again. Thank you. There was no scoring in the first quarter. Second quarter, there was scoring by both teams. At halftime, it was 10-7 with Cleveland on top. Third quarter, the Rams went on top. And in the fourth, it was back and forth with the Rams winning the second championship title with the final score of 24-17. And that does it for me. 1951.
Okay,
Back to you, Howard.
I love Howard Cosell. I'm out of character now. I'm just gonna say a couple words on Howard Cosell because he's awesome. He was awesome. He mostly known for Monday Night Football.
Right.
Big time friend of Muhammad Ali. He did a lot of boxing. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. That was big too. He popularized a lot of. He could go all. Berman always say that, but that was originally Cosell that said that. The Bronx is Burning is attributed to him too. Cosell doesn't even fit into the timeline, but I was impersonating him for a second there. So that's why I'm throwing in these things about him.
It's pretty good.
Thank you. In the 1977 World Series, when the Bronx was literally burning, there was a lot of small businesses setting fire to their places for insurance purposes. That line is attributed to him. There's controversy whether he said it off the air or not. He announced the death of John Lennon live on Monday Night Football when the Patriots were playing the Dolphins.
What did he say?
It had come out, the news broke during the time, and he said, Gifford was at the booth at the time, and he just kind of like made him say, hey, you have to say whatever we all know in the booth, and he said,
It was during a Tony Franklin field goal attempt by the Patriots.
Yes, he mentioned, hey, this is just a football game, no matter what happens, but we have to tell you, John Lennon, possibly the most famous of all the Beatles, shot dead
That's what I wanted
2
to hear.
times in the back. And
Did they know that at that time? I mean, it was just happened.
He pronounced him dead. Okay, it's a funny story, real quick. Somebody that worked for the network happened to be in the emergency room where he was brought into, and they got word back to the booth. Yeah, but actually, one of the other networks preempted them with the news somehow. I don't know how. So you don't know if they had to say it maybe just to get on board. You know, news is like, hey, we gotta get right now.
It was all about getting the scoop ahead of time.
Exactly. Wow. A little bit unfair what happened to Cosell with the little monkey comments, because Cosell, you know,
he did say it though.
He did say it, but he said it about white players too. He said it about his grandchildren. He had a great relationship with Muhammad Ali. You know, he had a great relationship with a lot of other African Americans, and he did a lot of things for them too. So that didn't necessarily lead to the end of his career. I think he got to the end of his career, but he got fed up with a lot of stuff. He ended up saying boxing was a savage sport, you know, during the time that he was calling a boxing fight that somebody was getting real beat up.
Now that you mention it, I remember he just suddenly quit.
During
a boxing match.
Basically, in the middle of a telecast, he basically...
I remember that.
He said just the smallest of details. You know, he stopped doing play-by-play. I believe Tex... Was it Tex? I can't remember who was fighting, but somebody was getting killed, and he got so disgusted he stopped calling the fight, and he didn't do any more boxing. The little monkey thing got him in a lot of hot water. He had said it before. He had said it about, you know, I don't think that dude was a racist, you know. He got shafted.
The Redskin player that he mentioned.
Yeah, receiver. Who even he himself didn't take offense to it. You know, he was like, you know, whatever. Howard's
name of that receiver's on the tip of my...
Yeah, I'm sure you can look it up.
Art Monk?
No. Taylor or something. Anyways, we're getting off track with Cosell. Who's up first? I got 1952. The Detroit Lions.
Woo!
Formerly, settle down. Formerly the Spartans. All right, so this was
Ohio.
Yes, this was played in Brick Stadium, which is later known as Tiger Stadium, where the Tigers played. This is their second championship. They beat the Browns, and this is kind of the start of a small dynasty, as you're going to see. The Browns were beaten 17-7. The Lions were 9-3, tied for first place with the Rams. And you just talked about the Rams' greatness a little bit. They had played earlier in the year, and this tie's killing me. They had to play a tiebreaker game, even though they had beaten the Rams already 2 times during the season. The rules at the time dictated that they had to play a tiebreaker game. The Rams, you briefly mentioned Norm Van Brocklin. The first time I met you for the second time, we talked about Norm Van Brocklin briefly. What did we say about Norm Van Brocklin? Which is so fascinating about him.
He's got one of the craziest records. I'm saving it for when you talk about 1954.
Well, okay. He's saying. All right, we're saving.
Believe me, I remember
Stay
what
tuned.
we talked about.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Norm Van Brocklin and what Olger's going to tell you about.
Olger wasn't putting it in his pocket and holding it to 54.
It's a fascinating story about him. You killed a lot of my episode right here by not saying that, but let's keep going right here. 17-7. Bobby Lane was the quarterback for the Lions. This guy's quintessential tough guy. In an era when most guys were playing with face mask, he didn't want the face mask. No face mask. They also had Hall of Fame former Heisman Trophy winner Doak Walker. If you're a fan of college football, even if you're not, you know that the best running back in college football every year gets the Doak Walker Award. Exactly. So he was playing with them. They had 7 Pro Bowlers. The coach was Buddy Parker. High scoring offense, 29.5 points a game. End/halfback Claire Box. I'm sorry, dude. My bad, dude. NFL leading 15 tight ends, 15 touchdowns. I'm trying to go too fast and I'm drinking too much. NFL leading 15 touchdowns, 9 in his last 3 games.
Wow. He was giving him the business.
Yes. This was versus Brown's great, which we've talked about, Paul Brown and Otto Graham. I love those old names. They had a great return man, Jack Christensen, 21.5 yards per punt return, 2 for touchdown. Best defense as far as points allowed, 16 per game. all-around powerhouse team, the likes of which you probably will not see for a long time. But
Come on, man.
Jack Christensen is one of the all-time great punt and kickoff returners. His numbers are freaking off the scales.
I'm so impressed with Ogre. He has, honestly, I'm not even joking. Good old school fucking hard-nosed knowledge. We'll just call it hard-nosed
Well,
knowledge.
he is an ogre, so he's
Yeah.
been around longer than us.
Yeah.
Slightly.
What else can I tell you? Bob Smith, one of the DBs, 9 picks. He was also their punter. Something you'll probably never see again. You know, like the DB with 9 picks, punting the ball. Although they should be able to do it, man. Randall Cunningham was a pretty good punter. I don't know if you guys ever... He had to punt one time in a game when the punter got hurt. He did like a 90-yard punt.
He did have a 90-yard punt against Denver.
Didn't he have like golden tip shoelaces?
Well, he
did
did
that.
it. He did it out of the shotgun position, which is what caught everybody off.
I think, yeah.
And that's why it went and bounced
Yeah,
like 90 yards.
Right, but still, dude. I mean, 90
yeah, no,
yards
that's
is
still
90
pretty
yards.
good.
They were already playing on Thanksgiving at this time. 6 future Hall of Famers. A couple of them I already mentioned. They started off 1-2. Both of them losses to the Niners. So, don't get down on your team if they lose a couple games early on. You never know. And one of those was in blowout fashion. They beat the Packers 52-17. This is pre-Lombardi era.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
48-14.
Damn, spanked them.
Yeah, they blew them out. And they blew out a lot of teams. Interesting note, only because I'm into old school names and old school people. Pat Summerall was a rookie this year. Rest in peace, great announcer. I love Pat Summerall. He could sum up a great call in like 3 words. It's like Aikman,
Completion to Monk.
Irvin, touchdown, and then the crowd.
I'll always hear him completing some pass to Monk. Always.
Yeah, I don't know why. To me, there's always Aikman is throwing a touchdown to
He
Irvin.
narrated a lot of the NFL films too. He was in a lot of the NFL
Great
films.
voice.
Yeah.
One of those voices that I really, really miss.
And a great marriage with John Madden. Like when I'm in heaven and I'm like, hey, watch football, and they tell you, okay, put Madden and Summerall are calling the game for me.
Yeah.
Either that or it's the Monday Night
I think
Football
Dennis
crew.
Miller was like the worst idea.
Oh,
ever,
God.
dude. I think I stopped watching Monday Night Football for like
Yeah, I mean
4 or
Monday
5
Night
years
Football
when he
for
was
us
there.
is probably Gifford, Deerdorf, and Michaels, right?
Michaels, I will watch him on a Sunday night and feel like I'm in a time machine. I love listening to that
Yeah,
man.
he's great. So, anyways, little side. He was a rookie there. He ended up breaking his arm, and he didn't play. And then he was traded, but that was his rookie year. So that's pretty much it on 1952. Detroit Lions. 1953. You're gonna see a pattern here. I got the Lions playing the Browns again. And the Lions win 17-6. Again, Brick Stadium, where the Tigers,
fucking A.
I believe this is their third. There's a third title, back-to-back wins. They were 10-2. A lot of the same players. No free agency. You're pretty much keeping the same guys unless you're trading them or they're retiring. They end up being the third team to win back-to-back. The Lions had to rally with a late touchdown and a conversion to win. Each player received $2,424 for the Lions, $1,654 for the Browns. 7 Pro Bowlers. Again, Lane and Walker are leading the team. Walker had 337 yards rushing, 502 receiving. There was a lot of the receiving running halfback at the time, that ran for, kind of an even amount. They were like a lot of poor man's Marshall Faulks. He had 5 touchdowns. He was also the kicker. 12 field goals, 27 extra points. 7 future Hall of Famers. Costenson, Creekmer, Yale Laurie, which was their safety. Lane, the quarterback. Joe Schmidt, a linebacker. Guard Dick Stanfield. And then Doak Walker. They lost twice to the Rams after beating them 3 times the previous year. But obviously that didn't stop them. They had the 5th ranked offense. And they played in front of a crowd of 97,000 fans.
Wow.
They put it away. I was just going to mention this name when they played the Rams. The Rams, they put it away. You mentioned it earlier, one of you guys. Touch, or maybe it was previous episode. A touchdown from Norm Van Brocklin to Vitamin Smith. Just fucking awesome names, right? Like, who's the fuck?
Vitamin Smith.
Yeah, bring back Vitamin. They beat the Bears at Wrigley Field with 4 picks of George Blanda. Everybody remembers George Blanda, later of Raiders fame.
Played until he was 46.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
He was a kicker later on, though, right?
Well, yeah,
Like, mostly primarily used as a kicker.
Mostly as a kicker with the Raiders, but he was a QB for the Oilers.
Yeah. Fucking Brady's getting to that fucking point, dude.
God damn it.
Yeah. The second game they played the Packers, 13 turnovers. The second Bear game, they picked off Blanda 5 times. I mean, we're talking about a pretty fucking good quarterback here. They picked him off 9 times in 2 games. This is when he was a Bear. They clinched with the Giants at the Polo Grounds, which we talked about earlier, how awesome the Polo Grounds are. Frank Gifford, another guy we mentioned, is on this team. Not this team, the Giant team, obviously. They held Hall of Fame quarterback Otto Graham to 2 completions with 2 interceptions on 15 attempts for 4 yards.
That's freaking nuts. I did not know that.
That's terrible for anybody, but when you're talking about Otto Graham, which is one of the all-time greats.
And I know you've appreciated what he's done.
Oh my God.
Researched him like
I'm going to get into it in the
Yeah.
next one. I had to save a little bit, but yeah. Otto Graham is just one of the Mount Rushmore guys for me. That's killer, man, that they held him to that. They called it
amazing.
in the Detroit Free Press the darkest day in 8 years of pro ball for Otto Graham.
Wow.
Dick Stanfield was the MVP. The NFL leader in picks with 12 was Jack Christensen. Besides the return yards, they had 238. We already touched a little bit about the Browns and their AAFC days. They won the 4 titles there. And the teams that came over with them, which are the Niners, the Browns, and the Colts. So these are happy times for you, obviously.
Super happy.
These were the years for you to be around. On to 1954.
And there's my cue for the story that I wanted to
Jump
talk
in.
about. Norm Van Brocklin, week 1 against the New York Yankees, throws for 554 yards. One of the things that I mentioned to you as one of the most amazing records that in today's modern age where we're
That got
throwing
you into the
football.
podcast. I'll tell you right there.
Oh, really?
Cheers for that. I was really impressed with that because I thought that, I don't know, that's pretty good
I
knowledge.
thought at the time that we had talked that was the most impressive record. There's actually one that's even more impressive that's still standing
In the
to this
NFL?
day, in the NFL. But just to kind of drive the point home, he threw for 554 yards. We still haven't beat that
In the era
of the passing game that we have today. And today I was watching on the red zone. I saw what's his name, Prescott from the
Dak.
Prescott.
Dak. I can't believe his first name. He had 275 yards at the halftime. I'm like,
What was a
shit.
Dak back in our day? I smoke a Dak, dude. Remember that?
He had he had 275 at the half. Had me thinking, oh shit, he's on pace.
That was today.
They usually
Yeah.
pump the
Yeah,
brakes.
they put the brakes down.
They were playing the
I'm,
Lions.
dude, I'm dying for
Why would
someone
you
to.
think that?
I'm dying
What did
for
the
someone to
Lions
break
do
it.
today?
They lost to the fucking Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm dying to see someone break
It was a
this
close
shit.
game, though.
Hey man, happy Thanksgiving if you're watching on Thanksgiving, by the way, because some people may be watching this on
Oh
Thanksgiving.
yeah, happy Turkey Day.
Yeah.
Or if you're Cuban, happy Pork Day.
We're gonna do a turkey and a pork.
We eat fucking pork.
Yeah,
Day.
that's- well, we get close. Like we had Mahomes had 317 yards at the half.
Yeah, if you're watching a football
straight
game
games.
and people are getting
Right.
close, you'll see his name, Norm Van Brocklin.
It's one of the most amazing records that it stands for 65 years.
Who got the closest to breaking it?
Ben Roethlisberger
He's
was
done
up
it
there.
twice.
Marino got over 500.
521 with
Yeah.
Marino. Ben Roethlisberger had 527, if I remember. Warren Moon had 533.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've had a few people get really, really close, but
I
no
think
one's ever
9
been able to do
dudes
it.
have gotten over 500,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. Something like that. So
something like that.
just fucking crazy
But
that
it's
that record
amazing.
stands.
65 years. Now, there's a record that stands that's older. 1922, Chicago Bears, Ernie Nevers ran for 6 touchdowns and 4 extra points. That's 40 points if you're counting at home. I don't think that's going to be broken.
You gotta score
Got
7
7 touchdowns.
7 touchdowns. I guess that could happen. That's really tough. What could break it could break tomorrow is that 500 How many yards is it?
I got 554.
That could break any moment. Moment.
I'm such an NFL fucking geek that I look forward every weekend to seeing that shit fall, and it never does, bro.
Yeah.
Anyway,
amazing record. Norm Van Brocklin was the fucking man. Did I finish with
yep.
1953?
Yep,
I did.
That was
on to
week
1954. Again, guess who's in the title game? The Browns and the Lions. Third year in a row. This time, the Browns finally beat the Lions. Fifth season in the
nasty.
NFL for the Browns. They have they're all defense. They're first in rush yards allowed. First, I mean least. Obviously least yards allowed, least pass yards allowed. So totally defensive team. Besides having Otto Graham, which is. I'm gonna get into Otto Graham later, man. Forget about it. I love that guy.
You have a bromance.
Oh man, dude, can I get an Otto Graham jersey somewhere? Let me know. I'll buy it. Paul Brown, which perfect name for the Browns. The team is kind of named after him. They did a contest or something like that, but it ended up being
one of those stories. That they say
you don't know.
Or a myth and
I
legend.
love that shit. It's better to not know, right? It's like the chick's not naked yet. You don't know what it looks like under there.
I want to see her naked.
I want to see her eventually, but like before, you're like, is it like that? Is it like this? You know what I mean? So that's some of the cool stuff about this old shit. Is like you don't really know. It's like, hey, is it like that? Is it like this? So Paul Brown, legendary, didn't just found this team. He founded 2 teams, which is just fucking insane, dude. There was some rumors that it was named after Joe Louis, which was the Brown bomber, also from that area. 1945 fan contest actually determined it, but I don't know. I kind of think that was their coach and.
Yeah, I'm sticking
Paul
to
Brown, Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, he's fucking awesome, but he didn't have anything to do with football. They played in Cleveland Stadium, which was later known as Municipal Stadium, which was home to the Cleveland Indians until 1993. And the Browns existed until 1995 when they left to become the Baltimore Ravens. So modern-day Baltimore Ravens are really the original Cleveland Browns, is what they are. Wow. The people you know as the Cleveland Browns today... They're just
doppelgangers.
They're a fucking expansion team.
They're 20 years old now.
Yeah, I know. For me, it feels like they're just fucking.
It feels like it was the other day.
Old, all right.
From 94 to 99, there was no Cleveland Browns. That was
right,
eons ago. It's 20 years ago, and it felt like it was yesterday.
Right. But it's just fucking weird, right? To have it.
We're in high school.
Yeah, I remember that era.
It feels like it was yesterday.
Man. Yeah, Bill Belichick was there in the.
Always looking a little depressed over there. Man. Give him a little
I wish I could go back in time.
Give him a little pat on the back, Howard.
You'll get back on the horse. Don't worry.
Get in there, ogre.
Where am I? They had one of the biggest. I'm gonna take these glasses off because I can't read my notes. Cleveland Stadium, blah, blah, blah. They had one of the biggest draft busts ever. Quarterback Bobby Garrett, selected first overall. He was to be groomed as the replacement for Otto Graham. He had a terrible stuttering problem. He could not communicate the play. I'm sorry to people. That was a bad joke.
Yeah, that's bad.
I'm sorry.
That's not PC, dude.
The producer of the show, he told me to say it like that.
The views and opinions of this show
do not express the host. He couldn't communicate the plays to the people in the huddle. Wow. He had trouble communicating the plays because of his speech impediment, and that really hindered his communication. And he just washed out after a couple of years.
Wow. Poor guy.
Yeah, dude, it's a sad story because obviously he had some.
I heard years later he became a mime.
Kicking a man when he's down, dude. So, I'm going to talk to Otto Graham. One of my favorite all-time players. He takes the Browns.
Is he still alive?
I don't think he is, man. God bless him. Listen to Otto Graham.
No, I think he died. But he was old as shit when he died.
Yeah, I think he's
close
dead.
to 90 years old.
Rest in peace. You know what? Fuck it, dude. Cheers to fucking... God damn it.
You had a chance to do it.
And Norm Van Brocklin, right? Both. And Norm. Fuck him. Fuck you, Tom Brady. That's some real fuck.
Jesus Christ.
10 title games in a row.
He died in 2003. Autogram.
How old was he?
82.
I told you, man.
He just turned 82.
So, dude, you make it to 10 title games in a row, you win 7 of them. That's a GOAT right there.
Career winning percentage of 81% in all games he played.
You're usurping me. I think that's the best winning percentage of all time. 57-13-1 record. That still stands today, I think. Pass per yards attempt, it's a record. I think it still stands today. He was a friend of George Steinbrenner, 3-time MVP. His numbers retired. You guys know about retired numbers?
Sure.
You know how hard that is?
He's got 2 of them.
Yeah, he wore 2 numbers. You're right. Did they retire both?
I think they did.
It's way more difficult for your number to get retired than for you to get into the Hall of Fame. There's 139 retired numbers in the NFL. There's 329 Hall of Famers. So about a third of Hall of Famers get their number retired. It's real tough, man. So that's like the ultimate honor. He enlisted in 1941 for service after the Pearl Harbor attacks with the Coast Guard. He played under Bear Bryant for Navy. Paul Brown offered him $7,500 per year and $3,500 a year for the years he didn't play until the war ended. Some people say he never wanted the war to end because he could just keep collecting that money. He also played on the Rochester Royals in the NBL, which was a precursor to the NBA, and he won a championship with them. So this guy was even a multi-sport athlete. He's also College Hall of Fame. Perfect season, as we mentioned earlier in one of, I don't know if it was this show, I think previous show, precursor to Dolphins. They had an undefeated season. And he retired later after beating the Lions in a championship game. So
I think I gotta
God
join.
damn it, that guy's fucking awesome.
I gotta join you on this bromance. I mean, look at this career.
Tell me, what do you got?
But 3-time NFL champion, 5-time NFL pro, first team All Pro, 4-time second team All Pro once, 3-time most valuable player, 2-time passing yards leader, touchdown passing leader, 2-time passer rating leader, 4-time champion on the AAFC. I mean, it goes on and on. 1975.
You've been talking a while, and you just got into the AAFC. Most of that other shit was just NFL.
Yeah, well, I misspoke. 75th anniversary team, his number 14 retired along with his number 60. I mean,
60 for a quarterback.
I gotta join you on this.
God damn,
I gotta
that
join
guy's
you on
fucking
this.
awesome, man.
This is freaking amazing. And
Yeah. Sorry he beat the Lions, but dude, you gotta give it up for Otto.
Oh, and by the way, they beat the Lions 56-10, and the Lions were a 4-point favorite going into this.
Thank you, because I forgot to mention that.
You could have left that part out.
And the Lions had won 14-10 earlier that season. Another continuing that whole theme
it's like a reoccurring thing.
Yep. So 1954, guys.
4.
We got the Browns and the Rams this time.
What do you mean 55?
What did I say?
54.
I'm sorry, 55. You're right. Thank you, man.
Sure.
1955, we got the Browns and the Rams. It's a 38-14 throttling. They were 9-2-1. This was the third and final NFL championship for Otto Graham. Baker Mayfield is no Otto Graham, dude. That's for fucking sure. What
Baker Mayfield's not even a Joey Harrington.
Did they play today?
No.
Oh, they played Thursday Night Football. God damn, that debacle with the helmet. You know, it's fucked up that happened because they looked like they were kind of coming around a little bit. I don't understand how that Browns team with Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, how can you not get those guys involved on little dump offs, little screens?
Running back is good too, Chubbs, right?
Yeah, man, you got a great running back too. The tight end they had got injured from UM, but still, man, there's like a lot of talent there. Anyways, they were the first defense with fewest points allowed and fewest yards for 2 consecutive seasons. They got off to a bad start, and Otto Graham had retired. They lured him out of retirement when they started off bad to come back in. And during their last 5 games, they averaged 37 points a game. They had a Hall of Fame fullback / running back who had 810 yards rushing, Fred Curly Morrison. So many dudes were like nicknamed Curly back then.
Probably bald.
Yeah. I don't think he was one of the Stooges though, but they had the most points, and of course the Rams featured Norm Van Brocklin. You know, I'm not sure who I like more, Norm Van Brocklin or I think Otto Graham, but
I got to go with Otto Graham on this one.
yeah, for sure. But no slouch, Norm Van Brocklin. This time he retired for good after the title game, ending a decade. I've mentioned it, it's worth mentioning again. Decade of excellence. 10 championship appearances. In his 10 years, he played 10 years, and 10 years he was in the title game of his league with 7 titles.
It's pretty impressive.
He had a severe gash with 15 stitches. His helmet was fitted during this game with a clear visor, and he went back into the game, which kind of paved the way for modern face masks that we have. He was the highest paid player in his final season. He retired as MVP and champ, a la kind of John Elway of our era, you know. He did a couple back-to-backs and he retired. The year after, the Browns were 5-7, their first losing season. The dude never missed a game. This is not the Otto Graham show, but God damn it, this guy, I can't.
I look at the numbers. I'm just making the math out here. He's completing about 15 yards per completion, means he's throwing the ball down the field. 9 yards an attempt, which is insane
For that era.
even today.
Even for today.
9 yards per attempt is insane. He was positive on his touchdown to interception ratio. His QB rating was 86.6, which is freaking amazing. Marino was 88.3. So
Yeah,
I mean,
phenomenal.
pretty amazing. I'm with you on this one.
He coached later on in his life the college All-Stars versus the Lions. He beat the Lions 35-19 with a college team. He coached the Coast Guard. Sorry. He coached the Coast Guard because he was a Coast Guard member himself, so he ended up coaching them. He beat the Packers in 1963 with a college All-Star
good
team,
thing, right?
20-17. He coached the Redskins to a 17-22-3 record in his time there, which is nothing to write home about. Guess who replaced him on the Redskins?
George Allen.
Vince Lombardi replaced him in 1969 as Redskins coach.
He was only there for a year, and then came George Allen.
Yeah. Then he later went back to the Coast Guard. He was an athletic director there. He coached again, and then an athletic director. Died of I could have told you the question if I would have remembered. He died of Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's, but he got Alzheimer's and he had an aneurysm and also struggled with colon cancer. I fucking love this guy. I think everybody knows. On to 1956, guys. God damn, this is gonna take a long time, isn't it? Is this thing even moving here? Let's flip this over so I know. The Giants and the Bears, which I think you had this thing a few times.
Yeah, my era, the Giants and the Bears was like 4 or 5 times they played each other.
The Giants get their revenge here, 47-7, blowout. The Bears had been 8-3-1. It's their first title for the Giants, but their fourth title, but their first in 18 years, and they would not have another for another 30 years until 1986. Lawrence Taylor and Sims and all that. They played in the Polo Grounds. They beat Papa Bear was involved here, but he was the owner at this time. They had tied earlier in the year, 17-7. So not necessarily the same scenario where they lost, but they had tied with them, and they ended up like really blowing them out, which is it's kind of amazing. 20 degrees at time of the game. Blanda was the backup quarterback and kicker. A couple of notable Giants here. Hall of Famer Frank Gifford. Rosie Brown, offensive tackle. Sam Huff, linebacker. The first defensive end, Andy Robustelli. Here's the 2 assistant coaches of Jim Lee Howell.
Amazing when you hear this.
Vince Lombardi was the offensive coordinator.
And Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator.
Tom Landry was
freaking amazing.
So you've got in this coaching trio here 8 titles.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's got to be the best staff of all time.
Absolutely.
Hard to. I was trying to work that one in.
We've kept the absolutes down to a minimum.
That's all he wanted to.
Tom Landry was a recent player for the Giants too. Gifford had a touchdown catch. I love Frank Gifford. He was like, I don't know. He always seemed like a regal, elegant kind of voice in that.
He was great, man.
Yeah, man. Michaels, I never liked Deerdorf too much, but he was kind of like the big jock guy, and Gifford was like a little bit more elegant and refined, and Michaels was like the real freaking pro that kept it all together. I love that booth. Is Deerdorf dead?
No, he's coach. He calls games for University of either Michigan State or Michigan.
Look at that.
He doesn't like to travel. He doesn't like to get on planes and shit.
Kind of like a John Madden.
Yeah,
kind of.
so he tries to.
I mean, he was the weak link in this. He hated the Dolphins too. I felt like he hated the Dolphins. But anyways, I love that booth. That's the booth I grew up with. I know you guys probably too. Giants took home $3,779. The Bears $2,485. That's pretty much all I got on 1956. Moving along, 1957, the Lions and the Browns one more time. Lions get their revenge now.
Ooh, spanking.
59-14. Am I right on this, Ogre?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm looking right
I
at
wasn't 100% sure if the Browns won. No, I already mentioned the Browns won their last one for a long time. Or forever. Hopefully not forever. If you're watching this 50 years from now, maybe it is. So, a repeat. They got... This is a repeat of 52, 53, and 54.
How many championships for the Lions at this point?
I believe this is the fourth.
Fourth?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in my notes it says, sorry, Hoffa, this is the most recent title. As in, my dad did not even have pubes at this point. That's how long ago it was.
You bastard. You really wrote that?
I did. It's right there.
That's fucked up.
I didn't remember it until now, but I put it in there.
That's fucked up.
Red Grange, the galloping ghost, was the announcer for this
Holy
game.
smokes.
You looked at me like he wasn't playing
He
in that
wasn't
game,
playing.
but he was announcing. I think for radio. I'm not sure for what. This was the penultimate regular season game for Bobby Lane.
Well, Bobby Lane got injured with a broken ankle.
Yeah, I got that right here. Look at that broken ankle right there.
Yeah, and then a backup came in for the second half
Tobin wrote,
and won the game.
yes, he ended the year with 3 wins to bring home the title for Detroit, a la Nick Foles. A tiebreaker game was required with the Niners, requiring a rally from down to 20. So this fucking
Tobin wrote.
Tobin wrote, not Robin Tote. He might have toted the ball on some occasions. But, dude, he had to come down for 20. Watch that chair, buddy.
That sounds like a fucking backup.
31-27.
Token Roach.
Well, and bucking the whole thing where they had played before and the Lions won, and they came back and spanked them 59-14.
That sounds like a weed head. Token Roach.
It's the longest drought in NFL history. The Lions right now. With that, I'm sorry, dude. I gotta say, I'm a journalist. I must tell it like it is. Doak Walker's gone by this point. George Wilson, first U.S. coach, who later was also the Dolphins' first coach of all time. He was a former Lion.
15-39-1 he went in his first 4 years with the Dolphins or something.
And
like
who
that.
replaced him over?
Oh, Don Shula, 1970 all the way to 1995.
There was a rookie playing in this game. He was held to 69 yards on 20 carries by the name of Jim Brown. So it was a revenge game and made 3 titles in 6 years. The Browns were 9-2-1 that year. Jim Brown that year had 942 yards, 9 touchdowns. Obviously, future Hall of Famer, retired in the prime of his career.
32 years old.
He was one of the few stars. He led the team.
29.
I think he retired, yeah, 29. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Barry Sanders.
Yes, Barry Sanders,
Oh,
another
sorry,
one.
bro. I didn't mean to
You guys
go
are
there.
just fucking like going
Well,
stake through the heart, huh?
2 all-time greats that retired in their prime.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Shit, about Megatron.
O'Connell was, well, he played a little bit longer though, right?
No, dude. Megatron played like
30, you know?
He was in his
drafted
30s.
in 2007, and he retired in 2000. 2000.
It's been a few years now.
15.
But I mean,
16
I
or
gotta say,
17?
he was like 32, 33, right? And he was declining. a little bit.
He had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
He had like
But
a nagging ankle injury.
Jim Brown and
every
Barry
year.
Sanders were not declining at all.
I don't even remember Barry Sanders ever getting injured, dude.
No.
Well, you got to hit somebody to get injured.
O'Connell Tommy was led the league in passing. A couple former notable players. Lou the Toe Groza.
Love him.
Chuck Noll was a player here. Ray Renfro. Mike McCormick, Walt Michaels, and Bob Gain. Which Bob Gain, he was a defensive tackle, but that should have been like a running back's name, you know, if you were like picking the names and shit.
Pop game.
Yeah. I'm going to 1958, guys.
The
1958.
biggest year. That's huge.
This is considered
Huge.
the greatest game. We've got the Baltimore Colts and the New York Giants. Giants were 9-3. Played at Yankee Stadium. Sixth season in the league for the Colts. And there was 17 Hall of Famers in this game.
Wow.
I mean, earlier you talked about a team with like 5 or 6, well, 8 teams. This would be combined between both 17 Hall of Famers. There's an NFL Films documentary about this game. The coach was Weeb Eubank. He won more titles. You'll hear about that later. He's the only coach to win titles in the NFL and the AFL.
He was the coach for the Jets in '69.
Yes. It was played in, why did I say Yankee Stadium here and I'm saying Memorial Stadium?
It was Yankee
I'm
Stadium.
sorry. Yes, the Colts played in Memorial Stadium in Baltimore during the season. That was demolished in 2000. This is either a 2 or a 7 here. They were led by Hall of Fame quarterback Johnny Unitas. Okay, I got the all-name tier. All-name team here. Under center, Buzz Nutter. Also on that offensive line, Fuzzy Thurston. At least it wasn't Fuzzy Nutter. All right? Just for fucking kicks and giggles, the backup quarterback / punter, Dick Horn. 8 Pro Bowlers with more normal names. But the guys I mentioned, that's the all-name team right there. Fullback, Alan Amici. Raymond Barry. Gene Lipscomb, Don Joyce, Gino Marchetti, Jim Parker, Johnny Unitas. You know, I already said 17 Hall of Famers took part in this game. It's considered the greatest game. It's the first playoff game to ever go into overtime. Sudden death overtime. And this kind of marked the beginning of the popularity surge of the NFL. Kind of pushed them to the forefront. Go ahead. You got some words on the tip of your...
This put them over the top in terms of just surpassing them with baseball. You had 45 million viewers. At the time, you had 200 million people in the country. About a quarter of the country was watching this game.
I thought you were going to say a quarter of the country was Buzz Nutter fans.
What a name for a center, right? Buzz Nutter.
But what's an interesting story is that Johnny Unitas at the end of the game was like, all right, what the fuck are we doing?
Nobody knew what overtime was.
We never heard that word before.
What is
he
that?
Said it. What do you do there?
It's a tie.
And what's cool about this is that the Giants had a 4th and inches with 2 minutes to go.
I'm sorry, Robert, because overtime, this is the first time we ever had an overtime game, right? Period? Okay.
They were up by 7, right? Or 3, I forget which. Well, they had a lead. No, they were up by 7, I believe. And the Giants had a 4th and inches with 2 minutes to go. They could have gone for it and just killed the game. They ended up punting it back to Johnny Unitas, who went on a 2-minute drill, which at the time no one had ever heard that drill. That term didn't exist. And he took them on a 2-minute drill. I don't remember if it was for a game-tying touchdown or a game-tying field goal. But bottom line, he tied the game. Wow. And then they went into overtime. Giants got the ball.
Johnny, you tied the game, right?
Yeah, Johnny, you tied the game.
It's one of the first 2-minute, probably not first, but most famous 2-minute drills.
It put the 2-minute drill on the map. Right. And then after that, in overtime, the Giants got the ball, didn't do squat with it, 3 and out, punted it over to Johnny U. He then took them on a drive where I think they did 80 yards or so. It capped off with Lenny Moore scoring a touchdown from 1 yard out. The crowd comes out and swarms them. It's like a mob scene. It was a great moment in NFL history.
Yeah, I'll just run through a couple.
Which led, by the way, into that game, the 1958 game, leads into why the AFL got started in 1960.
It was televised across the nation. Raymond Berry had 12 receptions for 178 yards. That was a record. It stood for 55 years until Demaryius Thomas broke it recently. The Giants were... Why does it say defending champs? That's not right. Because 1957 was the Colts. 1957 was the Lions, right? They were not the defending champs. They beat them in the regular season, though, with the injured Unitas. Pat Summerall was the kicker. He made a 49-yard kick, which was the longest up to that time.
For the season.
Yeah, in the season. Exactly. The Giants, they had to play a tiebreaker versus the Browns. Gifford had a 38-yard run, but he also had a fumble. Colts defensive back Milt Davis had 2 forced fumbles during the game, despite playing with 2 broken bones in his... God damn it, in his foot! God damn it, he had 2 broken bones in his foot, and he had 2 forced fumbles. Both of them, which led to touchdowns. Marchetti, which was a Colt defensive...
Nowadays, guys with turf toe don't play.
No, dude. Nowadays, it's like you throw a fart, it's like, oh, man, I'm not sure, dude. My contract year's coming up. I can't play. Listen to this guy. Fucking tough guy of tough guy. Marchetti. He broke his ankle late in the game. He refused treatment and watched the end of the game from the sideline on a stretcher. Who would do that today? Late in the game, Johnny Unitas orchestrated a 2-minute drill before the 2-minute drill was famous. There was a field goal with 7 seconds left to tie the game. The players were not sure, like you said, of what the hell was going to happen after that. And it's the only one to go into overtime besides the Pats and the fucking Falcons a couple years back, which is amazing that's happened. Then Unitas led an 80-yard drive to win, capped by an Amici touchdown, which he was known as the Baltimore Bulldozer.
It was Amici, that's right.
Yes.
It's a cool nickname.
There was at the 8-yard line, a fan ran on the field, causing a delay.
Streaker?
I'm not sure if he was naked or not. You always have to bring up naked people in the show, but the legend, and this is why I love this old shit. We don't really know. Most of the new shit we know right away, and it's on fucking Twitter and fucking this and that. We don't know about this shit. They say that there was a problem with the feed, on the fucking television, right. that NBC purposely sent the streaker out on the field to delay the game so they can fix the fucking technical difficulties that they were having at the time.
So it was a streaker.
Did I say streaker?
Streaker means naked. No, this guy wasn't naked.
It just says a fan ran on the field.
Yeah, he was naked.
All right, whatever. So we don't know if an NBC employee sent him there or not. 1959. Baltimore Colts beat the Giants. This is a fucking rematch. 31-16. Second consecutive title. Unitas NFL record at the time, 32 touchdowns in a year. First time anyone had over 30 touchdowns. Damn, I thought Y.A. Tittle did that once.
He did later.
Later, okay. So it's the first time anybody gets over 30.
Yeah, he had 36, which Marino broke with that pass.
Marino broke Tittle's record? Is that...
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was 36, and then he hit Cephalo in that game against the Raiders.
Wow, that's crazy, dude. He was in the midst of a 47 consecutive game streak with touchdowns.
Didn't go to 57?
I don't know how far he got, but my notes say he was in the midst of a 47-yard streak. So, yeah, it may have gone into the next year.
And then, what's his face from New Orleans broke it?
Brees?
Yeah.
Yeah. They won today. But they didn't do well last week. Only team in NFL history to lead the league in offense and defense. Passer rating for 2 consecutive seasons. They beat Lombardi's Packers twice in his first year as coach. 7 Pro Bowlers on the Colts, 7 Pro Bowlers on the Giants. It's a rematch. I'm not going to go too deep, but, the Giants again, they had Gifford, Summerall, usual suspects. So did the Colts.
Nutty Butter.
Buzz Nutter. I want my center to be, I'm going to be buzzing his nuts, so I want to, that's a good name. All right, dude, we're getting 1960. So after I do this, somebody's got the AFL origins, right?
That's me.
All right, good. 1960, Philadelphia Eagles, Green Bay Packers. Eagles have a 10-2 record. This is kind of the beginning of a new era. We're coming off that greatest game a couple years ago that we talked about. Eagles played that at home at Franklin Field. So new decade, new champs. This is Lombardi's second year. This is the third title for the Eagles, and this is this is fucking shocking, dude. First and only playoff defeat for Lombardi.
What?
Can you believe that?
Wow.
This is their last title until 2017 when they ended a 57-year drought and beat those goddamn no good fucking Patriots. So, Buckshaw was their coach who played under Newt Rockne under the unbeaten team. The owners of this team were called the Happy 100 Group, which was like a group of investors. They played on Franklin Field, which is still around today, deemed by the NCAA as the oldest stadium still operating for football. The University of Pennsylvania plays there. Not Penn State, but the University of Pennsylvania. First year of AFL, like Ogre's going to tell you about in a little bit. So they competed with draft picks for the NFL. They lost 6 NFL first rounders to the AFL that year. Chuck Bednarik, another great fucking football name. Best known for knocking out the great Frank Gifford of the Giants. He knocked him out of football for 18 months, which is considered one of the most vicious or most famous tackles in NFL history. But dude, if you look at the tape, and maybe Ogre can show you a little tape there later, or look it up yourself, it didn't look that vicious. I looked it up.
It's in our intro.
It was like a
today
close-
for
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's in
Oh,
our
okay,
intro,
cool.
yeah.
You'll check it out in the intro.
But I'll put it down.
It didn't
so you
look
can
that
see it.
It was
crazy,
like a
right?
clothesline, like a clothesline almost.
Like you see that type of hit all the time.
I think it's a perspective thing, man. Because we don't have video of it, we just have a photo. And I think if you just see it out of context, you could kind of see it a little harder than it
maybe
really was.
Bednarik was way bigger than Gifford, and that's important. But
He looks like he's unconscious, so that's for real.
18 months, bro.
Oh, yeah, well, there
you
you
don't
go.
hear about that
There you go.
often. A year and a half out of football from a hit, but that's what happened. And Gifford ended up becoming like a receiver later after
I
that.
was going to say retard.
That's a PC.
Dude, what are you, the non-PC member of the?
Not because he said
I said
Gifford-
receiver.
Gifford-
I didn't say
Gifford ended up being in
a receiver.
Okay.
I didn't say retired. I said receiver. Bednarik also has the distinction of being the last guy to play a whole game, both ways, which was common before
Iron
that.
Man football.
Yeah, you're going to play linebacker and running back, quarterback and DB. He's the last dude to play the whole game as a center and a linebacker.
Wow.
Bye weeks were introduced this year. Yeah, because they had an odd number of teams, 13 teams. The quarterback was Norm the Dutchman Van Brocklen. I didn't know he was called the Dutchman too. Was he called the Dutchman?
Yeah.
We had another Dutchman
Yeah,
before though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Flying Dutch.
Yeah.
This guy didn't fly.
His backup was also a Hall of Famer, Sonny Jurgensen.
Sonny Jurgensen is crazy. His numbers they look like a modern day equivalent. He threw for 254 touchdowns.
Insane.
In that era?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
For
he was-
any era.
He was really overweight. If you see photos of him, he's got a huge belly, like that guy from the Giants several years ago. Remember him?
The hefty lefty.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
He died.
Really?
Yeah,
Are you
man.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Lorenzen. Jared Lorenzen.
Fuck was that?
He was going to say absolutely.
I
and
was
he
stopping myself.
Jared Lorenzen.
He
ain't
died,
dead.
he died.
Look it up. Look it
He
up. Come
died.
on.
He
You're killing
died.
me, dude. I love
He
that
said
guy.
that shit in slow motion.
K-State, I
He
think, or
said,
something.
Because I caught myself in midstream saying it. I'm like, why am I saying it? What was his name? Jared.
Lorenzen. The hefty lefty, they called him. So, Sonny Jurgensen was his backup. They had 7 Pro Bowlers.
Just want to add, bro.
Yeah. Anytime. Jump in.
That's a great suit, bro.
Wow, thank
I've
you.
been looking at
Sir.
it. It's really nice.
I wore this to my 10th,
Yeah,
10th year high school reunion, this jacket.
he-
That's why I bought it. At a
Oh,
thrift
yeah.
store. I swear to
Yeah.
God. True story. Go ahead.
Jared Lorenzen died July 3rd this year.
God damn it, of what, man?
Of age 38.
Of what?
Uh,
I read where he was playing like some
He
cheese.
probably ate himself to death.
cardiovascular disease.
That means you ate yourself to
There
death,
you
right?
go.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh man, he was playing football too, dude. Not
Yep.
too long ago, like cheesy football.
You mentioned the word cheesy. He's a fat guy.
This is the start of the Lombardi run. They lose this, always a lot of times with these teams, the Bulls had to do it against the Pistons. Other teams had to overcome, like a little hump to get over it. And this was the Steelers' small hump. They only lost. Did I say Steelers? Packers only hump. This was the first appearance since winning in 44, which one of you dudes, I think you talked about it. The game was played in City Stadium, which is now known as Lambeau Field after Curly. They also played some games during this time at Milwaukee County Stadium with the Milwaukee Braves played, which are later the Atlanta Braves. Right. They drafted a couple of future Pro Bowlers this year and laid a little bit more of the foundation for the future. 20 rounds in the NFL draft at this time. What do we got nowadays? Seven. That's crazy, dude. 20 rounds.
So how long would that last? Like 4 fucking days or something?
Who knows, dude? Another note in Van Brocklin, he was 9 Pro Bowls. 3 times led the league in passing. 15 future Hall of Famers participated in this game. I mentioned some of the Eagles. The Packers were Lombardi, Willie Davis, Forrest Gregg, Paul Hornung, was a kicker and halfback, Jerry Kramer, Ray Nitschke, Jim Ringo, Bart Starr, Jim Taylor, Willie Wood. Great name for a safety, Willie Wood.
Lay the wood, Willie.
Yeah, lay the wood, Willie. Tickets were $10 and $8, and the two years earlier, both teams were in last place. So, there's hope for the Finns. That's all I got in 1960. AFL. You gonna give us some AFL? 1960 Origins. 1960. What do we got?
Origins. Why the AFL?
Why is the AFL here? We're doing fucking good. I just told you about some cool shit.
It all starts from 1958. That title game. NFL was really arrogant. It was all about running game and defense.
We pressed record, right?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
the NFL was all about a stingy defense and a stout running game, right? What you saw in 1958 was an amazing game. We had all these wealthy investors who wanted to go ahead and get a part of it with ownership. They went up to NFL offices and were arrogantly told, "Sorry, we're not interested in expanding." So then Lamar Hunt, Dallas Texans, future Kansas City Chiefs, decides to gets on the phone with a few people who have similar interests, and they decide that there's enough of us to form a league. And what we had was 8 teams that were able to kind of piece together. We had the New York Titans, we had the Boston Patriots.
New York Titans later become New York Jets.
Boston Patriots, which I know, I hate even mentioning it. But Buffalo Bills, Houston Oilers, right? That formed the East, and on the West we had LA Chargers and Broncos, Minnesota Vikings, or what soon would be Minnesota Vikings. We had Minnesota and we had Dallas.
But Vikings ended up going
to the NFL.
Yes.
The NFL on the surface was like, okay, we'll accept the fact that you guys want to have this league. We don't have any problems with it. But they really did have problems with it. The very next year, they decided to expand to Dallas with the Cowboys. So now Dallas, all of a sudden in 1960, has 2 expansion teams, Texans and Dallas Cowboys. NFL totally doing this to undermine AFL, right?
Yeah, they're at war.
And then NFL behind the scenes goes to each one of these teams, these 8 teams, and says, "Hey, I got an offer on the table. Become an NFL expansion team in 1961. Will you take it?" All of them but Minnesota says no. Minnesota takes the offer. In 1959, in September 59, they take the offer. They become an expansion team, the Minnesota Vikings, in 61. This is a total monkey wrench to the AFL because they already had a draft. Minnesota Vikings, or Minnesota team, had already its draft picks already allotted. They needed a replacement. In comes Oakland. Oakland takes over all those picks. It's really weird, man.
Oakland is like a last-minute throw-in, and they end up being one of the fucking baddest fucking AFL teams ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, they look at the mystique and the nostalgia, the black and silver.
That could have been the Vikings.
Look, I gotta be honest.
The Vikings could have been the Raiders.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, as a Dolphins, I have to give respect to the image, the mystique.
I gotta tell you, I love the Raiders.
I can't.
If they're not playing the Dolphins, I'm rooting for the Raiders.
I can't hate them.
No,
I really can't. So 1960 comes along, and now we have this slate of 8 teams that we talked about. Houston Oilers end up stealing Heisman Trophy winner
Billy Cannon.
Billy Cannon.
Yeah.
Billy Cannon becomes this huge name that
Billy Cannon actually signed a contract with an NFL team first, and the AFL got him like to get out of that and come over, and that gave him like great legitimacy. Wow, they could get real big time players.
These two leagues were throwing punches because the AFL took 75% of the NFL's first round picks away
And
that
Billy-
year in 1960.
Billy Cannon to me is kind of like, remember in the Western episode when I said Dave Rudabaugh is the thread to the West? He's kind of the thread to the AFL, which that'll come out later. But he ended up playing for multiple teams, a lot of times in the championship game, and just a great character for the NFL.
The Kevin
AFL.
Bacon of football.
Kind of, yeah.
So-
Oiler, a Raider, a lot of title games.
So he ends up becoming an Oiler. They win the title in 1960. They repeat in 61. And then in 62, the Dallas...
Well, let me stop you right there, though. I'm going to do 61. Then you're going to give me 62.
Go for
Okay?
it. Go for
so
it.
we keep it kind of chronological. 61, over in the NFL, we got the Packers and the Giants. This was not much of a game. 37-1. It was played in Green Bay. The Packers had an 11-3 record. The Giants 10-3. This is Lombardi's first title, which is considerable. This is also the first time they wore the classic G on the helmet. Before then, they didn't do that. Overall, their 7th title. I'm sorry, I know this is killing you. They drafted Hall of Fame cornerback Herb Adderley in the first round. Part of the roster here, we got Bart Starr, Paul Hornung, Ray Nitschke, Willie Davis, to name a few, Jim Taylor. This is an all Hall of Fame backfield. Undefeated preseason for them.
I'd like to find out when did they start doing the Lambeau leap.
That's kind of like a 90s
really
thing, I
recent.
think. I know Favre was there during that time. Yeah. They ended up losing some players this year to players they had on reserve because of the Berlin Wall being built.
The first Lambeau leap was Leroy Butler's return for a touchdown against the Raiders in 93. It was the first ever.
90s, look at that. Wow.
Cool.
Paul
Cool
Hornung
fact.
was the NFL MVP. Ray Nitschke and Hornung, they missed the game because of the reserve issue, but they were flown in from Fort Riley to make the Thanksgiving Day versus the Lions.
Dude, Ray Nitschke would eat nails with milk.
Yeah. All-time tough
Why
guy.
not milk to avoid the
That was a cereal, man. That's
On the Giants roster, you had Y.A. Tittle, which was another freaking, when you talk about the quarterbacks of these eras that we've been talking about, I think Otto Graham, Norm Van Brocklin, Y.A. Tittle are the freaking guys. I love that picture. Do you have
he's
it on
in the intro.
intro?
He's in the
That's
intro crying. It's one of the great
fucking
moments
classic
of a
picture.
broken nose and all that.
Pat Summerall was the kicker. They had 8 Pro Bowlers. They had lost 20-17 in to the Packers in the regular season, and the defending champions from the previous year, the Eagles, narrowly missed the playoffs at 10-4, and that's 1961. People, you had 1962 AFL you wanted to hit.
Yeah, 1962. Not a whole lot going on here other than Dallas Texans winning in double overtime, which would have been or was at the time the longest professional football game ever played.
So this is the second year of the AFL.
It's the third.
Okay, so you had 2 Oiler wins, right?
Two
First
Oilers win. And who did they beat? The 2-time defending Houston Oilers. In double overtime.
Was Billy Cannon here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The noteworthy thing about this is Lamar Hunt, after the game or shortly after, decides, I can't compete with the Cowboys in Dallas. So even though they won a title, he relocates the team in 1963 to Kansas City. Was choosing Miami as a choice, by the way.
Was a choice of cities.
There was New Orleans, Miami, and one other team I forget.
We spoke
One
about the
other city.
Rams earlier, right? That they were one of the only teams. Was it the Rams?
Yeah,
To do that? To
right.
win
But
and
that
then
was
move?
that was an NFL team. This
Right,
is
right.
an AFL team.
No, but I'm
Isn't
saying
right.
similar
Yeah, same
circumstance.
idea.
Yeah, which is unheard of. Can I have some?
So for 62, that's really all I'm going to talk about. It's longest football game. Dallas Texans move shortly after.
I'll give you mine 1962 here. This is a rematch. We got the Packers and the Giants again. Giants with Tittle. He's the NFL MVP. They're 11-3. Packers win this game 16-7. Maybe you want to fact check me on that. Yeah, pretty sure 16-7. 15 future Hall of Famers played in this game.
Jesus.
We're talking about how played or coached or managed. 15. It was so cold during this game.
How cold was it?
This is how cold it was. They had to build bonfires to thaw out the cameras. Wow. 17 degrees. A cameraman suffered frostbite.
His penis.
What?
His penis fell off.
Jerry Kramer, lineman, he filled in for Paul Hornung because he was injured as the kicker. He scored 10 points, 3 field goals, 1 extra point.
Jerry Kramer kicked?
Yeah.
The guy who laid out the block in the ice bowl?
Yeah.
Wow.
Filling in for an injured Paul Hornung, who was their kicker. The NFL's blackout policy meant you could not watch the home game, even if it was a title game. So many New Yorkers went to hotels in nearby towns just to be able to watch the game. They had to go to like Jersey.
Terrible, man.
We don't do that blackout rule anymore. But I hated it.
But it really sucked.
Terrible, man.
The weather favored the Packers' run-heavy offense, and to the Giants' pass offense. Obviously, with that weather, tickets were $8 to $12. Cost. The wind, it was so heavy. Besides the cold, the wind, it broke a flag. A camera fell over. Nitschke was named the MVP of the game. He got a Corvette.
You got a Corvette
as a prize, yeah, for being named MVP.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so we're getting into like some money here. Ed Sable's company, named Blair Motion Pictures, paid $3,000 for the film rights to the game. This company later became NFL Films.
In Secaucus, New Jersey.
Yep. It's considered one of the best teams of all time with 11 Hall of Famers. That's half of your starting roster. I mean, think about that for a second, dude. If you just have a couple Hall of Famers on your team, you're like, holy shit, man, they had... Who can you name me with multiple Hall of Famers off the top of your head? Go, off the top of your head.
What, current roster?
Anyone. Well, if it's current roster, let's just say current roster. Who has more than 2 Hall of Famers on their team right now? As we speak. I'll make it easy. Brady's a Hall of Famer, right? Automatic?
There's nobody else on that team.
Who else is nobody, right? All right, so Drew Brees, he's a Hall of Famer, right? Who else is on that team that's a Hall of Famer? Maybe Michael Thomas, maybe?
Not there yet.
But he could be, maybe, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe Kamara is one day?
Not there yet.
But maybe.
Right.
Maybe. So maybe. But there's no... These people had 11 Hall of Famers on that team, dude. Half the team. So, again, we got the Giants. They got the usual suspects. Gifford, Tittle. The Packers made almost $6,000. The Giants just over $4,000 for this game. You know, Lombardi's beating his old team here. Remember, we mentioned earlier he was a coordinator for this team. This was the quintessential 3 yards and a cloud of dust offense that they ran. They drafted a couple of future Pro Bowlers this year. And Frank Gifford, I don't know if he was suffering from that hit that Chuck Bednarik did on him, but he said, we lost, but we're still the better team. I think history will tell you that they were not the better team. Because I'm telling you that the Packers had 11 Hall of Famers. I'm not telling you that the Giants had 11 Hall of Famers. No disrespect to Frank Gifford. Rest in peace. I love you on Monday Night Football, but, you know, the Packers were the better team. This year, CBS signed a contract for $4.65 million. That sounds like a fucking lot of money for this era to televise all the regular season games. Their only loss, I'm always throwing a bone to you here, dude. Their only loss was to the fucking Lions on Thanksgiving Day. That's all I can do for you. This is the first year that they prohibited grabbing the face mask. Before then, can you imagine? Before then, it was fucking rah! You could just rip somebody's face mask off, no problem. Jim Taylor was the MVP.
Number 31.
Ali Sherman was coach of the year. Who's number 31?
Jim Taylor.
Oh, look at that. First pick of the year was Arnie Davis. And Ernie Davis was drafted by the Redskins. I don't know if you know about Ernie Davis. He was a great running back. Heisman Trophy winner from Syracuse, I believe. Was he 2-time?
I got to check that now.
Yeah, you might be right.
Ernie what?
Ernie Davis. He was traded to the Browns to play with Jim Brown at the peak of his powers. But sadly, he died of leukemia without playing a game.
What? I did not know that.
Yeah, man. Ernie Davis was supposed to be like the second coming of Jim Brown. Because I think Jim Brown played in Syracuse too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, man, that's crazy. Yeah, he won a Heisman and then was drafted first overall and then died before playing a game. I didn't know
Drafted
that.
first overall and then traded and then died. It was just crazy.
Wow.
Great defense, 3 shutouts. Willie Wood, 9 picks. They allowed 10 points a game. Go Pack, go. 1962. All right, 1963. You want to do the AFL 1963 or who's got? You got 63?
You got 63 or
64. All right, go 63.
Well, we talked
What's going on in the AFL? You're not good enough. You're not as good as us. I'm the NFL. You don't.
We haven't won anything yet. Well, we haven't.
The
merged.
inferior league.
So, Kansas City go. What am I talking about?
Dallas Texans becomes Kansas City Chiefs.
Right, we talked about that. Also, the Jets become the Jets. Right, they go from the Titans.
Rebranded.
They get rebranded.
It's crazy because I'll tell you a side story. I went to a Jets Dolphins game one day and they're wearing this fucking weird uniform, which is like all blue with a yellow helmet. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And they were wearing
That's that crazy Titans shit.
Exactly. They were later. I was like, oh shit, that's their original fucking uniform. Anyways.
I keep it simple here with the AFL. I mean, San Diego Chargers, they beat Boston Patriots in the Super Bowl AFL Championship.
Who wins?
San Diego.
First championship?
With Bambi, man, with Lance Allworth.
Nice.
So, as far as 1963, nothing much to talk about. They got over a million.
God damn it, why can't I do the years like him?
Like they got over a million.
We'll keep it simple here. Chargers beat the.
We have over 1 million gate receipts at the games overall.
Gate receipts?
Yeah,
not gay receipts. Gate receipts.
Okay.
Attendance is doing really
There might have
well.
been some gays receiving or going.
They're about to switch networks. One of the big things about the AFL.
They signed a good
They signed
deal,
a
right?
great deal.
Yeah.
They signed a great deal with either NBC, and then about year 3, which is around this time, they switched to either NBC to ABC or ABC to NBC. Get even a sweeter deal. And everybody loves the football because it's wide open, lots of passing. It's not that boring, run the ball 3 yards in a cloud of dust shit. So people really taken by the AFL game. Now the NFL's starting to take notice. Oh shit, these guys are getting numbers, they're getting sponsorships, they're getting endorsements. We need to start listening. There's an agreement at the time not to take each other's players. So if someone signs with a certain team, AFL, then the NFL cannot sign them. Vice versa. NFL signs a certain person, AFL cannot fuck with that guy.
Like WWE and WCW, huh?
That's it. You can't mess with them. And once you do...
Like a gentleman's agreement, right?
There's a gentleman's agreement. That rule's soon broken with the signing of Pete Goliak from...
A punter?
A kicker.
A kicker. Of all things, right?
A kicker. That's what breaks the camel's
You sign
back.
a kicker off somebody's team, and that's what sets all hell. This is 1963, right?
This is about 63 or 64. This is what starts the merger talk. So now this opens up the floodgates to bidding wars between the two. Owners in both sides don't want anything to do with that, and much more the NFL.
No, it's costing you money.
At this point, now they're coming to the table with talks about potentially merging. Years before, about a year or two before, they came to the table to them, and the NFL just denied it. So now they're starting to listen with the signing of Pete Goliak.
They're starting to get taken a little bit seriously.
So that's 63. That's the things that happened there.
All right, so let's take it to the NFL. We got the Bears and the Giants. And the Bears win this one 14-10. This is the 5th championship game at Wrigley Field. Tickets were about $12, $10, or $6, depending on where you're sitting. The Bears win this one 14-10. I mean, the Giants were so down on their luck, they even punted on 3rd down once. which is unheard of.
Wow.
Tittle had to take
Terrible.
Novocaine and cortisone for some injuries he had. And let me say something about Mike Ditka. Mike Ditka was a beast on this team. It's his third year. He has 8 touchdowns and 794 yards. As a rookie, a couple years earlier, he had over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns and 19 yards a catch. Like, even your best speedsters.
That's hard for a wide receiver in that era, much less a tight end.
Yeah, that's hard for a wide receiver in this era. Like, who does 19 yards? So, just an absolute beast for that team. They beat the legendary Packers team twice that year.
Nice.
Which is Lombardi versus Hallis. They lost their only game to the Niners. They were 11-1-2. They tied back-to-back 2 weeks in a row, 17-7, oddly enough, to the Steelers and Vikings. They had kind of like a running back by committee, which was kind of common in this era, amazingly. We always think of those workhorse backs, but they kind of had like a running back by committee. So they had 5 running backs that had over 44 attempts. Ronnie Ball, Joe Marconi. Their quarterback was Billy Wade. George Hallis was there, which had 3 stints as coach. So this is like one of his 3rd stints that he came back to be their coach. They held Johnny Unitas to 7 points in the regular season matchup, and their 2 wins versus the Packers denied them of an unprecedented 3rd win in a row in the championship game era, at least. Starr missed 5 games with John Roach coming in as the quarterback. He went 4-1. And that guy was kind of like a backup to the Stars because he ended up being backup to Len Dawson, Bart Starr, and later coming back to replace that injured Don Meredith for the Cowboys when he got lured out of retirement. We had 14 teams at this point. This was their last championship until 1985. You guys remember that 1985 team?
Yeah.
First year I started watching football.
What's the first
That
game?
was a nasty Bears.
What's the first game you remember watching ever in your life?
Super Bowl 20.
What is Super Bowl 20?
It was Bears over the Patriots. That's the first game I ever remember seeing, and I was hooked after that.
What year is that?
85.
What year?
January 20th.
What year is the
or
Dolphins
86.
versus the Niners?
That was the year prior, so I've never seen the Dolphins in a Super Bowl.
That's the first game I remember watching in my life.
Yeah, me too.
That's the first game you ever remember watching? God damn it, it went fucking downhill after that, dude. Like, that was it. Like, they should have said, hey, fucking 7-year-old Randy, this is the best you're gonna fucking get for
Dude,
fucking 40 years.
This
Fucking enjoy it.
It's fucking unbelievable.
damn it.
I've seen 33 Super Bowls live. 10 of them have had the Patriots in them. 30% of the Super Bowls I've seen in my life have the Patriots in it.
So
In
boring.
some way or shape or form.
Back to this fucking 1963 Bears team. It's a historic defense. They kind of brought that Monsters of the Midway name back that you had been talking about.
Butkus was on that team, right?
No, I don't think he was yet. Some of these linemen on this team, some of these kickers look like linemen, and actually their kicker was the fucking defensive tackle. They were one of the first teams to use a zone defense, which confused the shit out of other teams. They had 5 picks in the title game. During the season, they got lucky. They missed Bart Starr and Fran Tarkenton in the second game versus each one of those. And Richie Pettibone was one of their DBs. He had 38 interceptions in his career, it's the second most for the Bears ever.
Richie Pettibone?
Yeah. Good name, right?
Yeah, I like that.
For some reason, I'm having trouble reading my notes here.
Jim Beam.
Rosie Taylor had 8 interceptions, it says here. Hall of Fame linebacker Sam Huff.
Sam Huff is a hell of a player.
Versus the Lions, the last game,
Oh, man.
the punter was Earl Morrill. You know Earl Morrill. Earl Morrall, Baltimore Colts, replaced Bob Greasy for the Dolphins. There's the Giants' third consecutive appearance. So the Giants were in a lot of these fucking early games, man.
Lost a lot too.
However, I think it was their last appearance until 1981. Hugh McClenney was halfback. Hall of Fame. Thank you. And Tittle had a record 36 touchdowns, 32 points per game. This was your classic offense versus defense game that the Bears ended up winning. You want to do 60? Who's got 64 AFL?
I do.
Go. Hit him.
Well, in the 64 championship game, it was the Buffalo Bills. They actually won in the championship
Is that
game.
the only time the Bills have ever
They
won?
won in 65.
No, they won in 65 also.
2 years in a row?
Yeah.
Holy
and then they
shit.
lost 4 in a row when we were teenagers.
Obviously, the Juice was nowhere to be found. He was next decade, right?
Juice was 71.
Yeah.
Who'd they beat?
Chargers both times.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Destroyed them. It wasn't even close.
I mean, the second game was kind of like a shutout. It was 23-zip. The first game, 20-7, I wouldn't really call it destruction.
Yeah, but 2 games, 43-7. That's
Yeah.
destruction.
That's not much.
That was played at let's see here, War Chargers Memorial Stadium in Buffalo, New York. And there was 40,000 people in attendance. That's basically in 64. That was
Okay.
the championship game in 64.
Cool. I gotta do 64 NFL. We've got the Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Colts. 79,000 in attendance. The first championship game by CBS. Tickets were $6 to $10, and it was played in Cleveland. Won by them in a blowout, 27-0. Couple notes for this season in general. Defensive tackle Alex Karras, which was a Brown. He was Mongo from Blazing Saddles from a previous Old Goats podcast.
That's right.
He was Webster's dad from Webster. He got suspended for gambling. Something.
Wow, he was Mongol. That's right, but he was clean shaven.
Yeah.
He was Mongol.
There was some.
Mongo like candy.
Yeah, this dude was suspended because some gambling issues surrounding his. He had like a bar where there was illegal activity going on. Paul Hornung, Hall of Fame back from the Packers, was also suspended for that year for gambling. The roster's expanded from 37 to 40. You know, we talked about guys going both ways and all that. Not in that way. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay, right.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But
no.
it was cold and windy. Jim Brown, greatest back of all time for my money.
5.2 yards a carry. You can't argue with that.
I gotta go with Barry, bro. So,
He was also 5.2 yards a
I
carry.
gotta go with Barry Sanders, bro.
Dude, but the thing with Barry Sanders is he would get caught for losses like all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
lot.
Yeah, but then he'll break a 90-yard run once a game.
That
Yes.
run that he had against the Bears.
Nothing
where he
against
was ducking
Barry,
through a bunch of
dude.
people.
Barry's number 2 in my book. That's no fucking small potatoes, dude.
Alright.
He's fucking badass, dude.
Dude, in those Thanksgiving Day games where they wore those like crazy outfits,
Yeah, those were cool.
that
That's how I
was
became
bad.
a Lions fan, dude.
That was
On
bad.
Thanksgiving Day, watching that guy run.
And they both retired in their prime, you know, which is kind of like a thing that ties them together. Lou the Toe Groza, Hall
Love
of
the
Fame,
toe.
was on there. Paul Warfield, fucking badass receiver, later a Dolphin.
Isn't there a
Wait, he was a Brown.
Don't the
He's a Brown.
don't the
But
kickers?
I'm
in
talking about the
college-
Browns right now. But
Oh,
he was
okay,
a Dolphin
yeah.
later.
It's getting late in the day.
Yeah, he ended up playing on those Dolphin teams.
Well,
in
then
the
he
70s.
went back to the Browns.
Later.
Yeah.
In college, isn't the kicker or the best kicker award is the Groza award?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Lou Groza Award. It's like we talk about the Lions with Doak Walker, you know, best running back.
Yeah,
Doak
man.
Walker.
I wish I was called the toe.
What you call the
We
ogre?
could start calling you the toe if you want, dude.
The ogre's fine, dude.
Yeah, I could deal with that too. Yeah.
The toe, you know.
You ever seen that old school Browns logo? It's like a little elf.
Yeah, it's like a little dude with kicking a ball.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome, dude. I don't know why I put that down, but it's because I
You'll
like
see
it.
it right there.
Okay, cool. I love it. Johnny Unitas is on the Colts. A young Don Shula
Defensive back.
is coach of the year. He's already coaching at this time.
It's past that.
Yeah. Hall of Fame tight end John Mackey is on there. Galen Fisk is their captain, outside linebacker for the Browns. Leroy Kelly, which is halfback Hall of Fame.
Leroy Kelly.
I'm sorry, is he Hall of Fame? No, halfback rookie. What the fuck is FOB? Ernie Green, 2-time Pro Bowl back. Frank Ryan is their quarterback, 25 touchdowns, which is considerable at the time. Bill Glass, 4-time Pro Bowler. Jim Houston, 4-time Pro Bowler. And 6-time Pro Bowl attacker Dick Shanfrath. So 6 Pro Bowlers in all. This is the most recent Browns title in 55 years. I think this is the most recent Cleveland title since LeBron did, until LeBron, did that LeBron thing.
Dang.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about this. It's the 5th year of the third place game. You guys ever heard of this shit? They played a third place game.
Where the loser of they would play the college all-stars or something like that?
No, it was like you had 2 divisions, right? And like at this point, like 4 teams were making the playoffs. So the 2 teams that didn't advance to the Super Bowl would play like a third place game. A la World Cup.
Yeah, like the soccer. I was going to say like soccer.
Yeah. Which is so lame to me, dude. I don't want to play that game. I lost. That's it.
Yeah, you don't want to fucking...
You cannot...
That's just like fucking like getting dragged through the mud,
You should not be able to end the season with a win and not win the
It
championship.
doesn't count for anything.
Yeah, no, it's pointless. They ended it eventually.
That was probably just to get money.
Yeah, probably. Unitas was the MVP and Shula was coach of the year from the losing side. I mean, the Colts were really fucking good, man, but they got fucking blown out. There was light snow and wind. When Jesus Christ. When there was 27 seconds left, the crowd rushed the field and the game had to be ended. Unitas only had like 95 yards and 2 picks. Browns receiver Gary Collins 3 touchdowns, which is still a record to this day. Although it's been tied, it's still a record.
3 touchdowns in a game?
In a Super Bowl or a championship game.
Okay.
I keep saying Super Bowl, championship game. The take was 3 times what the AFL players made, and it ended a 6-year drought for the Browns. That whiskey's kicking in right about now. Jim Brown for the season, 1,400 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, his 7th rushing title. They were huge underdogs. It was considered the second biggest Super Bowl upset of all time. Stick around for number 1 later. And they drafted 2 future Hall of Famers in this draft, Warfield and Leroy Kelly. A couple of notables on the Colts. Charlie Winner was their defensive coordinator, which, goddammit, that's a good fucking name if you want to be a DC. Bill Arnsparger. You know who Bill Arnsparger is? I know you fucking know who he is.
Yeah.
Later defensive coordinator for Dolphins.
1972.
He kind of invented that 53 defense, or is
Bob
like the
Matheson,
3-4. Yeah,
right? Yep.
Exactly. Chuck Noll was a fucking DB on this team. Chuck Noll. And
I thought you were saying Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris was not on this team or any other team that I know of. But god damn it, I would.
Well, he should be.
I would
Chuck Norris
fucking.
is a badass.
I let him play if he wanted to. There was a whole. We talked about it in the pre-show. There was a Sam Spence NFL Films controversy. Sam Spence is, whenever you listen to NFL Films and that fucking badass music and shit, that's his music. I wish we could fucking play it, but we can't. All that great NFL Films music, Sam Spence did most of it. And NFL Films was kind of shady around this time. They were like, hey dude, your music is being used in a pornographic film by the name of Deep Throat. You need to sign over the rights to us to your music so we can go and defend this and get this off this porno flick. Nice. And he did, and they ended up like fucking him over for his music, and he didn't get the royalties for the music. Your iPad's drunk. For that.
So he got the deep throat.
Exactly. 1965 AFL. Where are we going?
The Bills beat the Chargers. Go
Again.
ahead.
That's it?
Take it away. Take it away, Howard.
23-0.
Woo! That's hard to follow up. The Packers, I feel like our heart's not into this right now. I got a lot of years left to go. Packers beat the Browns in the title game, 23-12. This is Lombardi, obviously, right?
Yep. The big thing to take away on this one for this season is that field goal that they said it was good when it wasn't.
Which would have gotten Shula back to that title game instead of the Packers, right?
Yep. It was a game-tying field goal. And,
Tell the story. Tell it good.
it was December 24th.
Well, you don't got to tell me the date.
65. I know that you were doing dates, so I was like, oh, shit. It was like the day before Christmas. It was basically what amounted to a divisional title game or divisional playoff game, and it was 13-10. There was a few 30 seconds left, and Don Chandler was kicking a field goal, and he missed it by about 3 yards. Swung his head in disgust and felt like he missed it because he did, and the referee underneath the goalpost signaled that it was good. Chandler wanted to go over to the referee and said, "No, I missed that kick." Every one of the Packers.
Sure he did.
No, he did. He was like, dude. Back then, you had a little bit of a difference between how people were.
What was he, a Boy Scout?
No, he was more sportsman.
People were a little more wholesome.
Yeah,
at
it
times.
was. There was a wholesomeness to it. He wanted to tell the referee he missed it because you look at the replay, he clearly shows that he missed it, the way he acted.
Right.
And then Barty told him, ripped him an ass, and said, "Don't ever, if you miss a field goal, act like you made it every single time going forward."
Yeah,
So it was a game-tying field goal. It went into overtime.
We'll say some shit.
Went into overtime, and then the Packers end up winning the game in overtime, and then they move on to either like what is equivalent to like an NFC title game, and then they went on to win the 1965 title game, the one that's before Super Bowl, the very first one before.
This is the last one before the Super Bowl era, right?
Right.
We're talking about here, so that's notable. And it kind of pisses me off a little bit that we don't talk about NFL champions. We just talk about Super Bowl. Of course, I love to diminish the Patriots whenever I can.
I hate that
as
too.
a Lions fan, you should.
Because the Lions, we had 4, right?
I believe so.
But the thing is, you're getting to the majority. 54 Super Bowls out of 100, so now you're in the majority, right?
Now most of them are Super Bowls.
Most of them are Super Bowls.
But still, man, you got to honor that era. We've been talking for fucking 3.5 hours or something. We haven't even gotten to the Super Bowl era. All these teams deserve their due. We can't short fucking shank them, you know? Right? Am I right? I tell it like it is.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So, we covered a lot of history. We don't talk about that.
Hey, nice shirt. Where'd you get that shirt at?
Us, you got a Young Bucks Old Ghost podcast shirt.
I wasn't expecting on premiering this today, but
you know what? Comment on the video. We'll throw you in for the contest. We haven't announced the winner.
free shirt.
Yeah.
If you made it this long.
Yeah. What else do I got on 65? Horning, no, game used. We're not selling game used jerseys right now, dude. That's fucking Hall of Fame material there. Horning had 5 touchdowns in a game. Yeah. Jim Brown was the MVP. Coach of the year was George Papa Bear Halas. Goddamn, that guy's still fucking popping up.
You said George Papa Bear hairless.
He was not hairless, I don't think. Notable players drafted this year were Dick Butkus, Gale Sayers, Joe Namath, and Fred Biletnikoff. And these are Hall of Fame players. I think all of those guys are Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Butkus, Sayers, Namath, Biletnikoff. What else I got?
Sayers only played 8 years, but
first championship game played in January. First
now televised. They're played in February now.
Yeah. First televised in color. 9th title for the Pack. There was 14 combined Hall of Famers. 14 combined Hall of Famers in this game. Frank Gifford, he's now into the booth. He's an announcer for this game. Heavy snow, 50,000 in attendance. 12-mile-per-hour wind, 27 degrees. Not quite frozen tundra, but fucking cold. Shout out to Chris Berman. So, $10 to $12 was the cost of a ticket. Bart Starr. Jesus fucking Packers. Bart Starr played with heavily taped bruised ribs. What else can I tell you, man? 41-year-old Lou Groza made a field goal in this game. This guy's going back to those AAFC days. This thing went into fucking overtime? How can that? No, that did not go into overtime. Jim Taylor was the MVP and he got a Corvette. This is, I think this is the second time I mentioned somebody getting a car. This is Jim Brown's last game.
Wow.
Notable for that. He was still not even 29. He went to pursue his acting career in Hollywood.